Nobody warned me about the return. Everyone talks about the dying. You die, there is a tunnel, there is a light, you see your life flash before your eyes. Maybe you see deceased relatives, and then you come back. That is the story people tell. That is the version that gets shared at churches and in books and in the comment sections of videos like this one. Nobody talks about the return. Nobody talks about why they chose to send you back. And I need you to understand that the why of coming back is the part that changed me. Not the dying, not even what I was shown on the other side. The why is the part that I have been carrying for 3 years now, and I am done carrying it alone. My name is Sarah. I am going to leave my last name out of this for reasons that will become obvious. I am 41 years old. I live in a state I am not going to name, in a house I bought with money that is entirely my own, and my husband is in prison for killing me. That is not a typo. He killed me. My heart stopped. I was gone for what the paramedics later told me was over 4 minutes. And I came back, and he is in prison, and I am sitting here telling you this because Jesus showed me something while I was dead that I was not supposed to keep to myself. If you are new here, subscribe. I mean that seriously. What I am about to tell you is not the kind of thing you hear once and walk away from. You are going to want to be here for what comes next on this channel. And if you have been through anything like what I am about to describe, or if you know someone who has, please leave a comment below. I am not asking out of habit. I am asking because the loneliest part of surviving what I survived was believing that no one else had been where I was. Comments are how I find out otherwise. They are how I know I am not the only one. Now let me start from the beginning. And I need you to understand that the beginning does not start with the night he tried to kill me. The beginning starts much earlier. It starts with what I missed, what I explained away, what I let build because I did not have a name for what it was. Because that is how this kind of thing works. It does not begin with violence. It begins with something that looks like love. His name was Marcus. I met him when I was 31. I had come out of a difficult decade. My 20s were hard in the way that a lot of women's 20s are hard. Jobs that did not go anywhere, relationships that cost more than they gave, a sense that I was always one step behind where I was supposed to be. And then Marcus appeared, and he was attentive in a way that no one had ever been attentive to me before. He remembered things. He called when he said he would call. He asked about my mother's health, and he remembered her name, and he wrote her a card on her birthday the second time we had met her. I thought that was love. Looking back, I understand it was something else. It was study. He was learning me. He was finding out exactly what I had always wanted, and then he became that thing, perfectly, like a mirror that reflects back only what you need to see. We got married 18 months later, and for a while I believed I had finally gotten something right. The first thing I missed was so small that even now, knowing what I know, I almost forgive myself for missing it. He criticized something I cooked. That is not unusual. That is not abuse. Except it was the way he did it. The slight exhale, the expression that said he had expected better. The way he immediately moved on, as if the disappointment was too minor to discuss, which meant I could not discuss it either. I just carried it. I told myself he had high standards. I told myself I could do better. A year after that, it was comments about how I dressed. Small things, suggestions, he called them. He never raised his voice. He never used cruel language, not at first. He had a way of reframing everything as concern. He was worried about the impression I made at his work events. He wanted people to respect me. He was trying to help me be the best version of myself. And I listened, because I loved him, and because I wanted to be the best version of myself, and because no one had ever seemed to care that much about who I was. The problem with a slow build is that by the time you can see the shape of it, you are already inside it. You look back and you try to find the moment it became something you should have left. And you cannot find a clean line because there was no clean line. There was just accumulation. Gradual, invisible accumulation. One small surrender at a time. By year 3, I had stopped seeing most of my friends. Not because he forbade it. Because being around them made me feel the distance between who I used to be and who I had become. And that distance was too painful to feel. So I avoided the thing that showed it to me. That is what I mean when I say symptoms ignored. I was ignoring symptoms because seeing them clearly would have required doing something about them, and I did not know how to do something about them, so I looked away. Year 4, he started to become physical. Not in the way movies show it, not a punch or a shove in a scene that clearly marks itself as the turning point. It was a grip that was too tight, a hand on my arm that stayed a second too long, with a pressure that was just enough to communicate something without being enough to accuse him of anything. And then one night, after an argument about something I cannot even remember now, his hand went to my throat for just a moment, not long, not enough to leave a mark, and he looked at me and I looked at him, and we both understood something that neither of us said out loud. I should have left then, I know that. I know that with every cell in my body. I should have left then. I did not leave then. Year 5 was the escalation. That is the clinical word for it, and I am using it deliberately because that is what it was. An escalation. An escalation that had been building since the first dinner where he exhaled at my cooking, except I had not been able to see the whole staircase, only the step I was currently standing on. By year 5, I could finally see the whole staircase, and it was taller than I had believed, and I was very close to the bottom. The night I died, we had been arguing for 3 hours. I am not going to tell you every detail because some of it is still part of an ongoing legal matter, and some of it is just mine. What I will tell you is that it ended with his hands around my throat and the ceiling above me, and a sound that I now understand was my own heartbeat slowing down, and then stopping. And then I was somewhere else. I want to pause here for a moment because I need to be honest about something. When I first started trying to describe what happened next, I tried to make it beautiful. I tried to use the language I had heard in other accounts, the warm light, the feeling of peace, the sense of being welcomed home. And some of that was true. But I am not going to give you the softened version. What I felt first was fury, not at Marcus, not at the situation, at the unfairness of it. I had spent 5 years disappearing, 5 years becoming smaller and quieter and less visible, and now I was literally invisible. And something in me rose up against that with a fierceness I did not know I had left. I wanted to go back not because I was not ready to die, but because I was not finished being angry. And there was something deeply wrong with leaving while I was still owed a response. The light was there. I could feel it. I will not tell you I saw it the way you see a lamp in a dark room, because that is not what it was. It was more like the atmosphere changed, like the air around me became something that had intention, something that knew I was there and was waiting. And I argued with it. I know how that sounds, I know. But I am telling you what happened, not what sounds reasonable. I stood in that place, or whatever standing means when you no longer have a body, and I pushed back against the pull of that light, and I said out loud in my mind, whatever out loud means when you are dead, I am not ready. I am not ready to leave this the way it is. I am not going quietly. I have not been given what I was promised. I did not mean heaven. I meant justice. And then Jesus was present. Not a vision, not a voice. A presence that arrived the way certainty arrives sometimes, like a thing you have known for a long time that you finally stop pretending you do not know. He did not appear to me in a form the way paintings show him. He was more like a presence that contained the quality of the person, warmth that had will, light that had grief. Understanding so deep it felt like being known in a way that should have been frightening but was not. He said, or I understood, or the knowledge simply arrived, that I could be heard. And I told him everything, all of it. Not the events, those were already known, but what it had cost me. What it had cost me to love someone who was destroying me. What it had cost me to stay when everything in me said to go. What it had cost my mother to watch. What it had cost every woman who had come before me, and every woman who would come after if this was simply allowed to continue without consequence. I argued with that presence for what felt like hours. I told him it was not enough, that forgiveness was not enough, that peace on the other side was not enough if the ones who do this thing simply continue doing it in the world I was being asked to leave behind. I told him I did not want to go quietly into that peace while Marcus walked free. And then Jesus showed me something I had not expected. He did not show me Marcus in hell. I want to be clear about that because I think some people expect this kind of experience to be about divine punishment as spectacle, as revenge presented as justice. That is not what I was shown. What I was shown was something both simpler and more devastating than that. He showed me what God sees, not what God judges, what God sees. And there is a difference. A difference that took me a long time to understand after I came back, and that I am still learning the edges of. What I understood in that place was that nothing is hidden. Not in the way religious language sometimes makes it sound, as if God is a surveillance system waiting to log violations. It was not mechanical. It was more like a quality of reality. Everything that is done to another person, in any space, in any darkness, in any room where no one is watching, those things have a weight, a texture, a permanent trace in the fabric of what happened. The moment Marcus's hands went to my throat, that moment existed. It was witnessed not by a person, but by reality itself, by the fabric of what is real, and it could not be unwoven. I understood in that place that the ones who do these things carry them, not as a punishment assigned from outside, as a weight that accrues. Every act of harm adds to a weight that the person committing it carries in their own soul, whether they acknowledge it or not, whether they are sorry or not, whether they are caught or not. The weight is not punitive, it is simply accurate. It is the soul knowing exactly what it has done, without the capacity for self-deception that the living rely on, and being unable to put it down. And I understood that the ones who have suffered the most, the ones who have been reduced and diminished and struck and silenced, carry something different. What I felt in my own chest in that place was not victimhood. It was not the reduced version of myself that Marcus had been working so hard to create. What I felt was something intact, something that had survived everything he had done to me, whole, unbroken, exactly as it was made, as if the damage he had inflicted had been inflicted on a surface and never on the thing underneath. I understood that this is what God sees, not the surface, not what the abuser has managed to make visible, the real thing, the original thing, the thing that was there before any of it started and that remains after all of it ends. I wept. In that place, without a body, I wept. Not from grief, from something closer to relief. The relief of finally being seen as I actually was, not as what 5 years of gradual destruction had made of me. And then I argued again. I know. Even in this, I argued. I asked why he was showing me this instead of sending me back with a transformed heart full of peace and forgiveness and acceptance. I told him I was not ready to forgive. I told him I was aware that you are supposed to forgive, that the spiritual scripts all say you are supposed to forgive, and that I was not there yet and did not know if I would ever be there, and did not want to be sent back as a person who pretended otherwise. What I was given in response was not a correction. It was not a lecture on forgiveness. What came back to me was something more like this. The anger you feel is not the problem. The anger is accurate. Anger at injustice is not the opposite of love. The question is not whether you forgive right now, but whether you are willing to carry what you now know into a world that needs to hear it. And then I understood why I was being sent back. Not to be healed into silence. Not to be transformed into someone who softens the story so it is easier to hear. I was being sent back because I had survived something that millions of women were surviving right now, today, in every city, in every country in the world. In rooms where no one was watching, believing that no one could see. And I had just been shown that someone saw, that everything was seen, that the weight was real and the soul was intact, and the damage was on the surface, and the truth of what they were had not been touched. That was the message. And I was the person who had been through enough of the furnace to be trusted to carry it without flinching. I came back, not gracefully. The paramedics would later describe what happened as medically confusing. 4 minutes without a heartbeat, and then something that looked on their equipment like a decision, like something switched back on. One of them said it was the most unusual resuscitation she had been present for in 11 years. She did not try to explain it, neither do I. I woke up on the floor of my living room. Marcus was gone. He had called 911 and then left. He told police later that he panicked. The jury did not find that compelling. Now let me tell you about the person who came back, because she is not the person who died on that floor, and I think it matters for you to understand that. The woman who died had spent 5 years learning how to take up less space. She had learned to anticipate anger. She had learned to rearrange her face before he came home, to have the right expression ready, to say the right things in the right order to avoid the wrong outcomes. She had become very skilled at managing a situation that should never have existed. And she had mistaken that skill for survival, when in fact it was a form of disappearing. The woman who came back does not know how to do that anymore. The skill is just gone. It is not that I decided to reclaim myself. It is that what I came back as does not have access to those patterns. It is like trying to run a program that was deleted. The interface is there, but the function no longer exists. I am louder now, not aggressive, louder in the sense that I take up the space I am actually in. I say things directly. I do not manage other people's reactions to my existence. I have been told this is alarming by people who knew me before. I understand why it would seem that way to them. I am also not afraid in the same way I used to be afraid. I was afraid for most of my life, not just of Marcus, but of ordinary things, of being wrong, of being too much, of being not enough, of being seen clearly and found wanting. That fear is not entirely gone, but it is not the first thing anymore. The first thing now is the knowledge of what I was shown. The knowledge that the real thing is intact and the damage is on the surface and everything is witnessed and the weight is real. That knowledge functions like a floor. It is always there. I can be scared and still be standing on that floor. There is something else I need to tell you, and this is the part that is hardest to put into words. The knowledge I received in that place was not information the way I am transmitting information to you right now. It was more like being submerged in a substance that was intelligence itself. Not facts, not data, not even wisdom in the way we use that word. It was more like the atmosphere itself was knowing, and by being in it, I was temporarily knowing in the same way, and I could feel the shape of things that I do not normally have access to. The way the harm humans do to each other is not random but patterned. The way the patterns go back generations. The way a man who uses his hands on his wife was often himself made into something smaller by someone who used their hands on him. The way this does not excuse the harm, but explains the transmission. The way the transmission can be interrupted. The way one person deciding to carry a different thing can change what gets passed forward. I understood in that atmosphere of pure knowing that what I was being sent back to do was not only to survive and speak, it was to interrupt the transmission. To be, by surviving and naming it and carrying it without shame, a different end to a story that usually ends differently. That is the battle now. Not the trial, though the trial happened and Marcus is serving time. Not the recovery, though the recovery is ongoing and non-linear and nothing like the movies. The battle now is the daily act of being the person who came back instead of the person who died. Being louder, taking up space, saying the real thing, not managing other people's comfort with the reality of what happened. I argued with the light because I was not finished. And I was right. I was not finished. I am still not finished. 3 years after I died on that floor, I am here, in front of a camera, in a house that is mine, telling you that someone sees what is happening in the rooms where no one is watching. That the damage is on the surface. That the real thing underneath is intact. That the weight is real, and it accrues, and it cannot be put down, and it does not require your acknowledgement to be true. If you are in a room right now where someone is building a weight they do not acknowledge, I need you to hear this. You are being seen, not by me, by something that sees everything, accurately, without self-deception, without the capacity for the story the person doing it tells themselves. The thing they are constructing in the dark is not invisible. The thing they are trying to destroy in you is not destroyed. The surface can be damaged, the real thing cannot. I came back because I was not finished saying that, and now I am saying it to you. This channel exists because I was told to carry this. Not just my story, this thing I was immersed in over there. The understanding that harm is witnessed and souls are intact and transmissions can be interrupted. I am going to keep coming back here to say it in different ways until it lands for every person who needs to hear it. If this is the first video you have found here, subscribe. I am not going to sugarcoat what I talk about, but I am also not going to leave you without the thing I came back with, which is the knowledge that the real thing underneath all of it is intact. That is not a small thing. That is the thing. And if something I said today landed for you, if something in this hit something in you that you have been trying to name, please drop it in the comments. Not for me. For the next person who scrolls through and needs to see that they are not alone in what they recognized here. The experience is a doorway. I went through it on the floor of my living room with a man's hands on my throat. You do not have to go through it that way. You can come through it by hearing someone who already went that way describe what is on the other side. What is on the other side is the knowledge that everything is seen and nothing is hidden, and the soul is intact, and the damage is on the surface, and the weight is real, and the transmission can be interrupted, and you were not destroyed by what tried to destroy you. That is what God does with every abuser, not in the moment, not as a visible consequence that satisfies our desire for immediate justice, but as an absolute certainty. The weight is real. It accrues. It cannot be undone. And the person it was done to is still whole underneath the damage. Always was, always will be. He thought no one was watching. Someone was watching. Someone is always watching. And the one who was watching has been telling me to say that out loud for 3 years, and I am finally doing it. I am Sarah. I died and I came back and I am still here. And if you need to hear that it is possible to come back, you just did.